for being here today and allowing me the privilege of standing before you and talking about something that I feel in my heart very strongly. And that is the opportunity to show our respect and honor those who have given their lives in service to this country. I'd like to take a moment, if I may, to acknowledge any of those among us who have lost a loved one in the line of duty. It doesn't matter how much time has passed. No words of condolence can adequately console your grief. I'm certain that every one of us here today hold that greatest respect for their sacrifice and are proud to honor their memory. Every man or woman who dons this country's uniform, be it for active duty, guard, or reserve, raises his or her right hand and swears this oath. I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. When that young man or woman swears that oath, they are signing a blank check to their country and to their countrymen, stating that I will give my life, if necessary, in the defense of this nation. Now, we honor the extraordinary heroism of some of our fallen through giving them medals and public acclaim, and it's right that we as a nation should do so. Our nation's highest award for valor is the Medal of Honor, and it goes to a warrior who performs an act of valor in combat against the enemy that is above and beyond that which would normally be required of them. In Afghanistan, Navy Lieutenant Michael Murphy led a four-man reconnaissance team in a fight against superior numbers. He exposed himself to hostile fire in order to call for help before he was killed. If you've read the book Lone Survivor or seen the film, then you are familiar with Lieutenant Murphy's heroism. In Vietnam, Marine Captain James Graham stayed behind with a wounded comrade while his fellow Marines pulled back to safety. He died protecting his brothers in arms. In Korea, Sergeant Don Porter fixed his bayonet, and while hopelessly outnumbered, he thwarted a surprise attack on his unit, and he saved many lives at the expense of his own. In World War II, on the island of Guadalcanal, Coast Guardsman Douglas Monroe evacuated Marines from a besieged beachhead. He maneuvered his landing craft so that he would protect the Marines from enemy fire, and he himself was mortally wounded. His last words to his comrades were, "Did we get them all off the beach?" Since the beginning of World War II, 854 Medals of Honor have been awarded. Only 236 recipients were alive to actually receive the medal. The others were presented to surviving children, grieving widows, or parents. And there are many, many more heroes. A few years back, I watched an interview with Staff Sergeant William Wild Bill Garnier. During World War II, he served as a non-commissioned officer in Easy Company of the 101st Airborne Division. You may recall that that unit was the subject of a best-selling book, Band of Brothers, and also an HBO miniseries. During the interview, Staff Sergeant Garnier stated, "There were very few heroes who came home from that war. The real heroes are the ones who lie buried in the cemeteries." And the men and women who give their life in service to this country are indisputably heroes. When their country called, they answered. Some volunteered, some, as we used to say, were voluntold, but nevertheless, they found their way into the ranks of the military and took it upon themselves to serve faithfully and to the best of their ability. In 1975, Navy Corpsman Ron Manning, just 9 days after his 21st birthday, was killed in action in Cambodia during the mission to rescue the crew of the Mayaguez. In 1983, Marine Corporal Warren Richardson, Navy Lieutenant Jim Search, died in the bombing of the Battalion Landing Team headquarters in Beirut. In 1987, Lieutenants Danny Smith and Dave Madison were killed in a flying accident. That same year, Navy Lieutenant Commander Dennis Seipel, Lieutenant Steve Healy perished in the Northern Arabian Sea during Operation Earnest Will. Their remains were never recovered. On September 11, 2001, Navy Commander Dan Schanhauer was killed in the terrorist attack on the Pentagon. So today, why do I read these particular names aloud? Because I personally knew every one of those guys. I worked with them, I deployed with them, I drank beer with them off duty and called each of them a friend. They were young, dedicated individuals, they were hardworking, and they were very, very sharp guys. I'm certain if they had chosen to go in the private sector, they would have been more than successful. But instead, they chose to serve their country in uniform and gave their lives in that process. They wanted to live long and full lives, just as much as you or I. But they gave up all of their tomorrows so that we might have our todays. In every clime and every place, throughout the decades of turmoil and battle, we've asked our young men and women to guard our liberty at the risk of life and limb. It is therefore fitting that we ask ourselves how we might honor their contributions on more than just this one day of the year. I believe we must teach others about the sacrifice of people, such as Captain Graham, Sergeant Porter, and Lieutenant Murphy. We must ensure that future generations understand that the high price of liberty is paid through blood and lives sacrificed on the altar. Their stories deserve a place at your dinner table, at your church, at your work, wherever it may be, that we can honor their service and cherish their memories. We can recognize their sacrifices by taking care of their comrades who lived. We can help ensure that dealing with lifelong impact of military service is not another battle to be fought by America's veterans. Today's veterans are returning home with traumatic brain injuries, painful and permanent scars and disfigurement, amputations, nerve damage, blindness and deafness, and shrapnel wounds. They have earned and deserve the very best medical care that this nation has to offer. Further, we must realize that a life can be sacrificed long after the final shot is fired. We must recognize that not all fatal wounds are visible. Yes, we must acknowledge the toll that suicide has taken on our veterans community, who sadly felt there was no way out, and those who died on the streets because the country that they served could not provide them with the resources to help them live meaningful lives. Today is not and should not be a platform for political opinion, and I don't intend to do that. But I will share this thought. 40 years ago, a full 70% of our federal lawmakers were veterans. Today, that number has dropped to fewer than 20%. I would only say to our national leadership, think long and think carefully before you spend our country's precious treasure of our men and women who wear the uniform. And be mindful of your duty, in the words of Abraham Lincoln, to care for him who shall have borne the battle and for his widow and his orphan. Allow me to close with lines from a poem by Lawrence Benyon. It's entitled For the Fallen. I always felt it's a very appropriate poem to read on this day. They went with songs to the battle. They were young, straight of limb, true of eye, steady and aglow. They were staunch to the ends against odds uncounted, and they fell with their faces to the foe. They shall not grow old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. Join me in paying respect to the many men and women who have answered their country's call and paid the greatest of sacrifices in the defense of the greatest nation on the planet. Enjoy your time off today with family and friends. Have a cookout, take your kids to the playground. Enjoy your day. But as you go about today and every day, take just a moment to remember them. I think they would have liked that. And thank you.